Reverse audio in horror cinema has always carried a strange kind of danger, a soft threat buried beneath static, waiting for someone curious enough to rewind the reel. In the early age of magnetic tape, filmmakers worked with machines that captured far more than scripted dialogue. Stray breaths that no actor recalled giving, distorted murmurs that shaped themselves into patterns, and faint pulses that only revealed intention when the sound ran backward. Some dismissed these fragments as accidents of flawed equipment. Others believed they were traces of something deliberately concealed, messages meant to surface only when time itself is pulled in reverse. Tonight, we enter 15 films whose most unsettling truths live in the echoes behind their soundtracks. Fact 1. The Beyond, 1981. The Beyond dissolves the boundary between the living and the dead, weaving a nightmare where reality thins into something unrecognizable. Fittingly, the film's most disquieting secret lies not in its images, but in a glimmering overtone woven into several key scenes. Under normal playback, the tone shivers like light splintering on water, sharp, brittle, almost musical. Reversed, it becomes something else entirely, a layered groan rising in pitch before collapsing into a whisper that seems to form consonants too faint to grasp. Audio engineers examining restored versions found no trace of this sound in isolated elements, suggesting it originated from bleed-through during early effects mixing. Some speculate that it came from an abandoned attempt to represent the voices of the dead, a vocal texture partially erased but forever embedded in the analog reel. What makes the anomaly unforgettable is its placement. It surfaces during moments when the film's dimensions blur, as though the hidden realm is expressing itself in frequencies just beyond comprehension. Listeners often describe the reversed whisper as if it's positioned not inside the film, but just behind them, lingering at the edge of perception. In the Beyond, terror is cosmic and formless, but the reversed audio gives it shape, a voice reaching through the thinning membrane between worlds, audible only when the flow of time is turned backward. Fact 2. Bloody Birthday 1981. Bloody Birthday hides its menace behind the innocent faces of 3 children, but the film's most disturbing hint of malice is tucked beneath its soundtrack. During scenes where the trio conspires in silence, a subtle oscillation pulses under the score, a flutter soft enough to mistake for recording interference. Played forward, it resembles a faulty metronome. Reversed, it transforms into a warped cadence that mirrors the rhythm of a skipping rope rhyme, its pattern unsettlingly steady. Some listeners claim to detect reversed syllables buried within the pulse, faint but resembling fragmented names or commands. The composer denied ever using vocal textures, insisting the film's small budget left no room for experimentation. Yet, an old assistant recalled that early edits tested children's voices layered beneath certain scenes, meant to hint at corrupted innocence before ultimately being removed. If echoes of those whispers clung to the analog tape, they might explain the anomaly, but not how perfectly it syncs with the children's appearances or shifts in tone. Fans who isolate the reversed audio describe a sense of playfulness twisted into something predatory, like a cruel game chanted under the breath. The effect reframes the film's young killers not simply as disturbed, but as conduits for a darker rhythm, one that only reveals itself when the soundtrack is pulled backward into shadow. Fact 3. Mausoleum 1983. Mausoleum revels in the spectacle of possession, yet its most chilling manifestation isn't any visual transformation, it's a murmur buried within the film's sonic undercurrent. During key moments when the curse tightens its grip, a dense, throbbing drone pulses beneath the score. When heard normally, it reads as an unsettling tonal bed, but reversed, the drone fractures into ragged, staggered breaths, each one sharp enough to suggest panic or exertion. Sound specialists examining the original elements found no such pattern in isolated tracks, meaning the anomaly only emerges in the full composite, a convergence of sounds behaving like a single distressed voice. Rumors circulate about an experimental voice track once used during editing to create a demonic presence, later removed but never fully eradicated from the analog tape. Fans who analyze the reversed breathing describe an unexpected emotional weight, as if the entity is not roaring, but gasping, caught in its own violent metamorphosis. This reorients the film's supernatural threat from an external monster to a creature suffering within its own skin. In reverse, Mausoleum's possession becomes less an act of domination and more a portrait of torment, whispered through the film's very frequencies. Fact 4. The Incubus, 1981. The incubus tells a story steeped in dread and superstition, yet the film's most mysterious disturbance lies buried in its mid-range frequencies. During scenes where the unseen entity's presence hovers over the characters, the soundtrack carries a trembling pulse that drifts slightly out of sync with the rest of the score. Played forward, the pulse feels like an uneasy vibration. Reversed, it expands into a breath-like rhythm punctuated by faint clicks, sounds uncomfortably close to consonants forming and dissolving. Engineers who reviewed the surviving mixes noted that the anomaly appears across all versions, which rules out a single defective tape. Some speculated originated from an early attempt to create a vocal signature for the entity, later abandoned but never fully erased. Others attribute it to the quirks of analog equipment, amplifying unintended harmonics. What makes the anomaly so memorable is how it seems to mirror the emotional peaks of the film. The reversed breath pattern intensifies when fear takes hold, creating the sensation of an unseen companion inhaling alongside the characters. The incubus already uses silence as a threat, but this reversed whisper adds another layer, a suggestion that the entity is not confined to the narrative, but vibrating just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to reverse the reel and hear it breathe. Fact 5. The Boogeyman, 1980. The Boogeyman frames its terror around a cursed mirror, but its most haunting reflection isn't visual, it's a whisper entangled within the soundtrack. During scenes where the mirror exerts its quiet influence, a faint, wavering overtone rises beneath the orchestral cues. Forward, it resembles a slightly detuned instrument, unsettling but easy to dismiss. In reverse, however, the overtone loosens into a soft, looping hum that carries the broken rhythm of a lullaby sung by someone who has forgotten the melody. No vocal elements were documented in the score, and the composer denied ever recording such textures. Yet an archival audio reel mislabeled as room tone reportedly contains a fragment of a vocal test track, suggesting that what survived may be the ghost of an abandoned idea. What troubles listeners most is how precisely the reversed melody aligns with the mirror's appearances, almost as though it responds emotionally to the events on screen. Fans who isolate the audio describe a tender but distorted quality, like a voice trying to soothe itself from behind the glass. This hidden lullaby reframes the mirror not merely as a supernatural object, but as a container for something trapped, something that hums softly in reverse, yearning to be remembered. Fact 6. Don't Go in the House, 1979. Don't Go in the House builds its terror around the suffocating weight of childhood trauma, and the film's audio anomaly seems to echo that damage. During moments when Donnie wanders through the charred remains of the home that shaped him, a faint, jittery shimmer rises beneath the score so thin it could be mistaken for faulty equipment. But reversed, the shimmer tightens into a strained sequence of consonants, reminiscent of someone whispering through clenched teeth. Audio specialists who revisited the master tapes found no trace of this sound in the isolated music tracks, meaning it exists only within the full composite, a ghost born from the intersection of dialogue, ambience, and emotional resonance. One retired crew member mentioned early experiments with whispered overlays meant to reflect Donnie's fractured psyche, though he claimed all such work was discarded. Yet the remnant remains, echoing like a bruised memory that refuses to fade. Fans who analyze the reversed sound often describe the sensation of being scolded from just behind the shoulder, a presence too close for comfort. The effect transforms Donnie's home from a physical space into a psychological chamber, one where past harm mutters through the walls, audible only when time runs in reverse. Fact 7. Death Ship, 1980. Death Ship thrives on the oppressive atmosphere of a vessel soaked in old horrors, but the film's most disquieting echo hides in the metallic rumble under its soundtrack. In scenes deep within the cargo hold or along rusted walkways, the ship emits a resonance that blends seamlessly with natural creaks so well that most assume it's structural sound. But reversed, the resonance stretches into a slow, rhythmic drag, uncannily similar to labored breathing filtered through steel. Some listeners report hearing faint fluctuations, giving the impression of syllables too warped to decode. Though some collectors insist a sound mixer once experimented with reversed voices, no evidence has ever surfaced to confirm it. What elevates the anomaly beyond simple tape noise is its emotional synchronicity. It strengthens during scenes tied to the ship's violent past, softens in quieter moments, creating a sense that the vessel reacts like a wounded organism. Fans often describe the reversed breathing as patient rather than aggressive, as though something trapped inside the hull has waited decades for company. In Death Ship, the terror doesn't just come from the ghosts of its history, it comes from the feeling that the ship itself remembers, inhales, and quietly answers back when the audio runs backward. Fact 8. The Unseen 1980. The unseen hides its horror in a basement suffocated by secrets, but its most unsettling trace isn't any physical threat, it's a sound most viewers miss entirely. Beneath the score of several subterranean scenes lies a trembling low-frequency hum, the kind that seems to vibrate in your ribs more than your ears. Forward, it resembles unstable machinery or shifting pipes. Reversed, it transforms into a fragile, descending wail that settles into a hoarse exhale, almost like someone grieving quietly in the dark. The production's surviving sound notes mention no vocal experimentation, only straightforward orchestral design, which makes the anomaly even more confounding. An old assistant editor once speculated that an early cut of the score might have contained a vocal layer later removed, with residue imprinting itself on the analog tape. Yet fans who study the reversed audio note something far stranger. The exhale aligns uncannily with the unseen character's movements, as if the film itself is exhaling alongside him. This gives the creature's presence a tragic undertone, a sense of longing rather than malice. Instead of depicting a monster, the reverse sound becomes an emotional confession, faint and unintentional, leaking through the film's claustrophobic spaces, like a trapped soul whispering through the floorboards. Fact 9. The Nesting 1981. The Nesting surrounds its central character with the weight of a forgotten past, but the film's most sorrowful presence lives in a sliver of sound beneath the score. In scenes where she wanders the old brothel or pauses on creaking staircases, a faint hiss trails behind her, too fragile to register unless isolated. Yet backward playback reveals something startling. The hiss condenses into a wavering moan, broken and uneven, as though someone were trying to speak through shallow breaths. Archivists who've evaluated original prints found no whisper tracks or vocal experiments in the stems, suggesting the anomaly may have arisen from environmental noise captured during on-location recording. But fans who've dissected the reversed audio notice an emotional consistency. The voice surges in moments tied to the house's traumatic history, softening during others, like a haunting synced to memory rather than plot. Some interpret it as an auditory echo of the tragedies that unfolded in the house, a lament embedded in the building's very acoustics. Regardless of origin, the reversed whisper deepens the film's melancholy, shifting its fear from simple haunting to a sense of unresolved grief, rising softly from within the walls. Fact 10. Evilspeak 1981. Evilspeak blends early computer technology with occult ritual, but the film's strangest artifact isn't visual, it's auditory. Whenever the protagonist interacts with the Academy's outdated computer, a peculiar resonance threads through the background hum. Played normally, the sound is little more than distorted machinery, but reversed, it elongates into a guttural, stuttered pattern that feels disturbingly intentional. Those who've slowed the reverse track hear something between a laugh and a command, as though a trapped voice is attempting to mimic speech through corrupted circuitry. Technicians once blamed the anomaly on the reflective surfaces of the basement set, which often created feedback. Yet a former transfer operator later remarked that the reversed signal felt like something pressing its way outward, as though the machine were housing its own whisper. The anomaly becomes even more unsettling when paired with the film's plot. It appears only during sequences where the computer begins to display supernatural influence. Whether crafted by accident or design, the reversed audio makes the machine feel inhabited. Instead of a simple narrative device, it becomes a mouthpiece, a cold, digital throat, speaking a language intelligible only when time is flipped. Fact 11. The Hearse 1980. The hearse surrounds its protagonist with grief and superstition, but its most haunting detail hides not in the story, but in the engine's voice. During scenes where the hearse glides across lonely roads or idles near the old house, a resonant hum lingers beneath the soundtrack, a hum too tonal to be mechanical, too rhythmic to be coincidence. When reversed, that hum unfurls into a rising and falling cadence, reminiscent of a muted chant, as though someone were repeating a broken hymn from inside the chassis. Sound mixers, who revisited the film years later, admitted to battling what they called phantom overtones, vibrations that persisted even when the vehicle wasn't running. No intentional vocal layers were ever listed in the production notes, and the composer dismissed the idea with a shrug, but listeners who've analyzed the reversed audio consistently note a pattern, faint but structured. Others point out an eerie synchronicity. The reversed chant grows clearer during moments when the protagonist senses a presence tied to the car's past. Whether the anomaly came from acoustic interference or a forgotten experiment in the mix, it transforms the hearse into something sentient, not a simple prop, but a vessel carrying a voice that murmurs only when played backward. Fact 12. The Black Room 1982. The Black Room dresses its voyeuristic horror in shadows and dim lamplight, yet the film's most unsettling observer may not be any character on screen. It may be something hiding in the audio. Throughout scenes where the house seems to breathe around its inhabitants, a thin rasp rises beneath the synth score. It feels like static at first, a byproduct of low-budget equipment. But when reversed, that rasp stretches into a sequence of tightly spaced sounds that recall someone counting soft, deliberate, and strangely patient. Archivists comparing various prints discovered the anomaly repeated with uncanny consistency, suggesting it was not a random tape error. An early rumor claims that a discarded vocal experiment once existed in the sound design, meant to evoke the voyeur's anticipation, though no one has ever confirmed it. What complicates the mystery is how perfectly the reversed cadence aligns with the film's gaze, the way the camera lingers, the way the house seems to wait. Fans who have isolated the audio describe feeling watched, as if the film itself is timing their reaction. In a story about intrusion and unseen eyes, the Black Room's hidden whisper becomes a presence of its own, not a voice of menace, but of obsession, quietly counting down from the darkness behind the wall. Fact 13. The Redeemer, Son of Satan, 1978. The Redeemer, Son of Satan, unfolds like a feverish morality tale, but its most cryptic moment hides underneath the low rumble that appears during scenes involving the enigmatic preacher. At first, the sound seems like ordinary room noise, air moving through an old building, or a distant engine idling. But reversing the track reveals a structured cadence, broken into clusters resembling a chant spoken backward. Some listeners claim to recognize reversed Latin phonetics. Others hear a rhythmic echo of the preacher's own speech patterns, as if a shadow version of him were delivering a counter-sermon behind the scenes. Surviving crew members deny ever recording reversed vocals. Yet one early rough cut reportedly contains an even clearer version of the anomaly, implying it existed before the final sound layering blurred it. The emotional quality of the reversed chant is what disturbs most listeners. It doesn't feel threatening, but forlorn, like a plea uttered from beneath the film's surface. The Redeemer already blurs the line between divine punishment and human cruelty, but this hidden voice adds yet another layer, a suggestion that the film's spiritual conflict bleeds into the very vibrations of its soundtrack, whispering through frequencies not meant for ordinary ears. Fact 14. Night School 1981. Night School presents itself as a grounded urban thriller, but beneath its discipline and shadows lies a sonic detail that has puzzled listeners for decades. In the final pursuit sequence, the music's percussive rhythm carries an odd flutter barely noticeable unless isolated. Reversed, that flutter stretches into a thin, wavering tone, followed by what resembles the faint lilt of a child's voice. Archival reviews of the sound stems revealed no trace of vocal layering, and yet every known release of the film retains the anomaly. Some believe it came from an ambient field recording unintentionally captured during production. Others suggest remnants of an early, unused musical cue that survived erasure. The composer, when questioned, deflected the rumor with a cryptic remark, "Tape always remembers." Viewers who have slowed the reversed audio describe the voice as uncanny rather than threatening, like a child attempting to form words but not fully knowing how. This quiet intrusion clashes with the film's gritty realism, creating an unintended supernatural tension. Night School's terror normally comes from a human killer, but its strangest whisper might belong to someone or something the script never acknowledged. Fact 15. The Sender, 1982. The Sender begins with a survivor pulled from a failed suicide attempt, a man whose mind seems to spill into the world around him, yet the film's strangest intrusion hides in its soundscape. During the mixing process, technicians noticed thin, fragmented murmurs that refused to match any recorded dialogue. These fragments became clearer when the audio was run backward, soft but persistent, forming a phrase that listeners could never fully agree on. Some insisted it sounded like someone urging, "Bring him back," while others heard only a weary monotone plea. What unsettled the crew was that the anomaly resurfaced even after several remixes, as if embedded deeper than the tapes themselves. An unfinished early cut reportedly revealed even stronger reversed elements, suggesting the phenomenon existed before the score was finalized. Fans who experiment with the reversed audio describe a pulse beneath the whisper like a heartbeat recorded too close to a microphone, faint but steady. Whether an overlooked bleed-through or an uncredited experiment, the effect aligns eerily with the film's themes of psychic leakage. The horror here lies not just in telepathic visions, but in the idea that the film carries a voice of its own, one that only speaks when you rewind. Bonus film: Let's Scare Jessica to Death 1971. Let's Scare Jessica to Death drifts between reality and delusion, following a woman whose mind feels as fragile as the quiet lake surrounding her. Yet the film's most unnerving whisper isn't part of her dialogue, it's hidden in the ambient sound that trails her solitude. In scenes where Jessica sits by the water or wanders the lonely farmhouse, a faint ripple curls beneath the natural ambience, subtle enough to seem like mere environmental noise. When reversed, that ripple unfurls into a trembling murmur shaped eerily by the rhythm of Jessica's breaths. It never becomes full speech, instead hovering on the edge of articulation like a thought forming before collapsing. Archived sound notes reveal no experiments involving reversed vocals, and the director maintained that the film relied on simplicity to reflect Jessica's unraveling mind. Yet the reversed whisper behaves almost intentionally, swelling during moments when Jessica doubts her perceptions and softening when she clings to clarity. Some argue it's nothing more than water or wind warped through analog tape. Others believe it may be an early, uncredited attempt at subliminal sound design. But to listeners who have isolated the anomaly, the effect is profoundly intimate, less an external haunting and more a whisper rising from inside Jessica's fractured psyche. It feels like her thoughts have found a voice, but one she was never meant to hear forward. If you've followed these echoes to the end, remember this: some voices only reveal themselves when the world is played backward, and some truths prefer to stay buried in the static between frames. If exploring these hidden corners of horror speaks to you, consider walking with us a little farther into the dark. There are more films that hum beneath their own soundtracks, and more whispers waiting for someone willing to rewind.